Okay, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm here with Michelle Masters. Now, Michelle is one of my go-to resources when I'm wanting to learn more and more about children, about family dynamics. And she is an internationally best-selling author. She's been a personal development trainer and coach since 1995. Michelle's work is an innovative blend of neuroscience-based change techniques, family constellation work, and quantum healing modalities combined with profound understandings of what really creates transformation and long-lasting change for people. She's been nicknamed the coach's coach because so many of the top coaches and speakers in the world have trained with her. And Michelle speaks all over the world and she has clients all over the world. So I'm just so happy to have you here with me, Michelle, and speaking to me and speaking to our audience. Welcome.
Thank you. It's so good to talk to you again, Jessica.
Yeah. So, Michelle, you have such a beautiful blend of frameworks. I love that it's, there's this NLP aspect to it. And we've also got this quantum healing aspect, which I feel like we're really delving more and more into as the years progress. And I think what's been happening in the last few years is really guiding us to ask more questions about this avenue. And so I'm interested from your perspective, how does this blend work with your clients? So we've got NLP, we've got family constellation work, and we've got quantum healing. So what does that mean to you when you're working with families? For now, let's say families or parents or people. Well, how does that look to you? What does that mean?
Well, as human beings, we do exist in a three-dimensional world, right? We have physical bodies, we have neurology, kind of a Newtonian kind of world. So we do exist, we experience matter and time, etc. As human beings, though, we also exist outside of time and space, right? We're eternal, we are non-local, like we're not limited to these bodies. We exist across time and in multiple times and dimensions simultaneously. And then as an added interesting kind of quirk about being human, we have this drive to belong. While we're in, especially when we're in physical bodies. And this drive to belong is really primal. Like, people will die to belong. It's one of our, it ranks right up there with survival because they will die to belong. And so, and for some reason, for human beings, they compute their belonging in terms of conformity. So when we're like the people we come from, we feel like we belong. When we're different, our belonging feels threatened. And so, and this is in nature, where all of nature is designed to produce diversity, right? So you have each human being is completely unique, never been here before, even in this format, right? At the same time, kind of compelled to belong, working within the scope of a three-dimensional reality and simultaneously existing outside of time and space. So there's a lot going on, right? There's a lot going on. And any one of those things could be part of what's keeping somebody or a family stuck. Or it could be a combination. So I find having tools for all of that really expands both the amount of change that you can help facilitate and the depth of it.
That's so fascinating that you bring up that belonging sort of coincides with conformity.
Yeah.
Because one of the things, and I mentioned this, in my intro in the podcast, is, how do we raise these self-expressed little beings when conformity is so well, pushed, basically. And I know even for myself recently, so I can feel when my decisions, even in my intimate relationship, it's going against the family unit, or it's going against my need to just know that I'm still a part of my family unit. I can feel it within my gut. I can feel it within my body. And if we're not aware of it, it's actually really toxic. It can be so damaging.
Yes.
So where do you see, I guess, in a family structure, where do you see it being the most devastating? What do you see?
Yeah, because it is so primal. And yes, as you say, it can be incredibly destructive. I was walking, like a couple years ago, I was walking along and I was listening to a podcast. In the middle of the podcast, a commercial came on. And this was only like 2 years ago. And the commercial said, scientists are now talking about the belonging effect, because science tends to be a little slow sometimes. That because this has been around for a while. But they were like, the gist of it was, people are more productive, they're happier, et cetera, when they have a sense of belonging. And so then what they said was, they said, so buy our matching hats and t-shirts. Like, that's what this company was selling. But that's how primal it is. I mean, this is what the military does when they want to create group identity. They make everybody dress alike, they shave their heads alike, answer alike, move alike, sports teams, right? When they're wanting to create a sense of bonding and belonging, it's flat out conformity, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And
And
so when we start to have a different experience from the people we come from, like alarm messages go off for us.
yeah, it really does feel like that.
Yeah.
And so from your perspective then, with that in mind, how is this impacting children then? So, and I guess what the parents' views and expectations of their children need to be, should be, what a child needs to look like in terms of their behavior, all of that, the conformity aspect. How does that impact a child developing and developing their own sense of self, or just being themselves?
Well, this is the biggest block I face when I'm working with people of any age. Actually, this is the hardest thing to shift, even with adults, is this desire to belong and hence try to, on certain levels, to conform. So for kids, especially because they cannot take care of themselves, right? Their survival is dependent on belonging to their pod, whatever that, is. And so when they start to move out of the family, a lot of in teenage years, they transfer it onto friends, but right, you see it, how you play out there. So how this usually ends up being a limitation is not even necessarily something that parents are intending to do. But let me back up for just a second. There's never been a child born in the history of humanity who did not want to heal their families. Okay, because when kids come into a family, they feel the pain of the current members and even previous members. They don't understand it, they don't consciously know it, but they feel it, and they want to make it better. And so every single child that's ever been born has tried to heal there's never been a child who hasn't tried to heal their family. There's also never been a child who has pulled it off. Right? They all try and they all fail, and they fail in predictable ways. And the first way they fail is they try to love the family pain and submission. I will love them so much that it will all be okay. And because their love is so big and so pure, and because they have zero sense of proportion, this feels like it could work. It never works. If it worked, every single parent would be instantly healed upon the birth of their first child. It'd be like, oh, dear, I thought I had issues around, my own self-worth and abundance. And I thought you were sort of a narcissist, borderline personality, but we had this baby and it's all fine. Like, childbirth would be the recommended form of personal development if it actually worked, right?
Yeah.
Never works. And so then the next move the kid makes, and they don't do this consciously, but like, I will take the pain from them. I will have the pain so they can be okay. I'll be the one who is sad, or I'll be the one who is angry, or I'll be the one who's a screw up, or I'll be the one who fails or is depressed or anxious, fill in the blank. This also never works, because you can no more take somebody's depression or anxiety than you can take their irritable bowel syndrome, right? Like, you cannot, I will pass gas so you can feel better. Like, it doesn't work, but it's an instinct. And then the last maneuver that a kid makes is then, okay, well, if it was hard for you, it will be hard for me. If you struggled, I struggled. If your relationships didn't work, mine won't work. If you had to, weren't happy in your job, I won't be happy, etc. And if that kid starts to have a better experience in either their health or their love or their money, they feel guilty,
Mm.
right? And they will start to limit it.
Yeah. And I guess you probably predominantly work with adults. So you're seeing more so the parents, but the gift that you have is that you completely understand what their children are trying to achieve, if it is directly about their child. And I'm wondering from your perspective, Michelle, when you're dealing with the adults, how often do you need to go towards the parents' childhood versus just speaking about their children? So, they've got their own little child in front of them that can act as a bit of a mirror, what's going on, what the problem is, what the issue is, why we're so triggery, why the parent is so frustrated, easily to anger, easy to frustration, easy to overwhelm. Or we need to backtrack and go, okay, well, let's discuss your own childhood here. So how often is that necessary, or is it necessary all the time?
I hate to say all the time, but I would say close to all the time. I mean, truly, because I mean, we're all a work in progress. We all have sore spots and places where we're stuck. And there is nothing, I mean, the wattage on having a family, because there's so much love, but there's a lot of wattage, there's a lot of energy there, right? I mean, let's face it, kids don't have jobs. They got nothing to do all day except basically experiment on their parents, like, right? And see, oh, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? What happens if I'm like this, right? And they also live in their parents' psychic fields.
Yeah.
So they live in their parents' emotional fields. If you've ever noticed how, like kids who are a certain way, if they're with another adult, they behave differently. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Because there's a different kind of field running, a different set of beliefs, a different set of emotions, etc. And so it's not that children don't have their own personalities, because they do, right? But if there's something that's really getting triggered, so I usually work with adults, and sometimes they'll say, how old, can I send you to work with my son or daughter? And I'll say, how old is your son or daughter? And if the kid is, especially if the kid is little, like 5, 6, 7, I'm like, you know what? Let's do a constellation instead, because the chances that it's actually something, the chance is so much more likely that the child is responding to the energetic family field rather than this is something that's their own thing. And their brain isn't developed enough yet to be able to do the kind of more cognitive work on changing their beliefs, but it's almost never required, because it's almost always, they're like a little canary, the canary in the mine.
Yeah. And so from in the constellation work then that you're talking about, I guess for people that maybe have never heard of this type of work, why does this work, or what does it involve that it really does help, I guess, that energetic field that you're talking about as the family?
Yeah, so when you're born into a family, you're born into like a field of consciousness, of energy that contains all the members of the family. If you're familiar with a hologram, if you take a small part of a hologram, it contains the entirety of, like, the whole thing in very low resolution, but any one part of a hologram contains the whole part of it. And so when we're born into a family, it's similar. Like we have the whole of the family lineage, and this stuff is more biology than psychological, so it's really biological line. Even if we don't know those people, we carry sort of that energetic blueprint for the entire group, and we operate within it, and we're at the effect of it. And mostly we don't even know we're at the effect of it. It just seems how things are. But when you shift any one part of the hologram, the entire hologram has to shift.
Yeah.
Now, when you're doing a family constellation and you shift something for one person, they let it go. You may not, we don't do it so that the rest of the family shifts, but quite often you will see shifts in the rest of the family.
Okay. And is that because we're healing something? Is that the purpose of it? Is it that we're healing a past wound or trauma, or is it, what is it that we are coming to terms with or
Right.
accepting in that
Yeah.
space?
Because there's a lot of people. I'm actually going to be at a summit at the end of the week for ancestral healing, and a lot of people feel like it's their job to heal their ancestors. And again, this is not what we're here for. But when you do your own healing, and the healing mostly is letting go of everybody else's pain. When you actually let go of everybody else's pain, you have no idea the impact that makes. Because you think about your parents for a minute, any of you who are listening, I don't just mean Jess, but imagine if they weren't carrying any of their family's pain. Like, how different would it have been for you growing up if they had if that's all they had done was to let go of the pain of their lineage, right? Entirely different game, right?
Entirely. I have goosebumps because it's entirely different.
Yeah. And so, we don't come here to do other people's healing work. We're allowed to do our own, not others, but people don't realize when you do yours, when you let go of the things that are, especially the ways that you're recreating or trying to carry other people's pain, which never helps them and is really problematic for you. You can't change their pain because it's not yours. So now you're really stuck, right? When people let that go, the impact is tremendous. It is so tremendous. And, a lot of people worry about, I want to make a difference. Well, if you're here, you're going to make a difference. That's not in question. The question is what kind of difference, right? And every single person that lets go of the family pain, especially of other people's pain, and starts to live a life that's freer and happier and more, with more possibility, is like fantastic news for everyone. Like, it starts to shift the balance towards the tipping point where that becomes the norm.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's an extraordinary concept, because I think of my own parents and I think of where their struggles were. And, my dad was depressed and suicidal and an alcoholic and a gambler. And my mum then was quite depressed and anxious and whatnot. And I just know his pain and suffering was definitely from his family and the relationships with his parents, a lot of pain there. So it just keeps coming through and keeps coming through. And I felt it. Course. And if he had have dropped that or been able to, it's unimaginable to know what could have been possible. So for you then, I'm interested. I see like these two ideas coming together in what creates some family suffering, and that is this conformity aspect, and then the carrying of our own parents' pain and suffering.
Yes.
Is that how you see it?
Yes, that's the family loyalty piece. Absolutely. I was working with a client once, and I asked her a very specific question that was designed to get to the root of what was in her way. And it became obvious that this was something that she had taken on for pain of the family that she had taken on. And I pointed that out, and she said, that's interesting, because I worked with a native healer once, I think it was in Hawaii, who said that 60% of the pain people carry is not their own. And I said, I think that's a conservative estimate. I actually think it's higher.
Yeah. And so I'm always interested, and it depends on everybody listening, your belief system in terms of, is there a higher power? Are we, do we have this soul within us? And, that's such a huge topic for people. And I'm going to say for myself, that is my belief. I believe we have this soul, and yes, we have this body right here, right now, for a brief period of time. And so then I'm curious, is there a purpose to us take, I'm always curious what the
Mhm.
purpose is of that,
Right.
are we here, we come into this world as a child, and are we here, we all experience taking on the family's pain and this need to belong, and with that comes all of these issues. And is there an overarching purpose of all of that in your mind?
I don't, at this point, if there was once, I don't see a big upside to keep continuing to replicate pain, especially because the most often the original participants are dead and gone, and they have let it go. They are not in it anymore.
Mm.
So, I
Mm.
mean, I can tell you my personal experience, and if this, I don't want to, I'm not trying to impose beliefs on anybody either, but I had to have the right lobe of my thyroid removed, because it wasn't cancer, but it had just gotten really big. It was like down in my chest, and it was pushing my windpipe to the side. It was making it a little hard to breathe.
Mm.
So, because it was so big and because it was in my throat, they were going to need to intubate me and put me under general anesthesia. And so I went in feeling just so safe and supported. So they didn't have to give me Versed, which they often give people, which can mess with your perception.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was coming out of the anesthesia, I had a visceral experience of something that I had always known, but it was so unequivocal. So here's what happened. You know how they say with coma patients, they can hear you. You know how they say that? Well,
Yeah.
my hearing was the first thing that came back online, because my vision I don't really have memory. The visual feed on that whole experience doesn't kick in until the car ride home, but I started hearing, and it was a little like a near-death experience, although I was in no danger. It wasn't, but I've heard people who've had near-death experiences say that this one guy said it was like my brain was no longer in the way of my mind. And that was the experience. Everything was so clear. I cannot, like, I didn't, the post-op nurse was trying to talk to me, and I didn't know if I could actually speak because I had been intubated. They had cut in my throat. I knew they had to make a cut in the muscles that did the vocal cords. So I didn't know if I could speak.
Mm.
So I started using sign language, which I had used since I was a really little kid, because my grandmother was deaf, which if I had to right now, I couldn't, but it was so clear. Everything was so clear. And next to me was this woman who was further along in post-op, and she was Polish, and she'd been a little girl during the war.
Mm.
And she was talking about all of her family members who had died and suffered in the war. And then all of those who had suffered and died under communism in the years after. The thing was, they were right there. Honest to God, all of those family members were there. They were fine. They loved her so much. They just wanted her. They were just there for her. They were in no pain. And I thought, somebody needs to tell her, like, they're right there. They're fine. And
Yeah.
then, but because this was also clear, I realized she was still kind of identified with that, attached to that identity of being a Holocaust survivor. And it gave her a sense of significance that she didn't yet have another way to feel. And so it's like, no, she's not ready. She's going to hang on to that till the end, but she's going to be with him soon enough. Leave her be. However, my post-op nurse, this young woman named Jessica, actually, I still don't know what she looks like, but there was so much love trying to get to her, so much love. And she asked me a question, something about my heart. I'd had a little bit of AFib when I was under anesthesia. I have AFib all the time. It's no big deal. So I said, my heart's fine. And I was completely clear, and I knew, oh no, my heart is fine. And then I said to her, how was your heart? And she got a little confused. And I said, not your physical heart. And there was this long pause, and I couldn't see her. If I could have seen her, I could have known, how's this going?
Yeah.
But I thought, this is probably wildly inappropriate. This woman's just trying to do her job, but it really wouldn't leave me alone. And I said, look, you are so loved. You have no idea how loved you are. You are so incredibly loved. And it was just this long pause. And then she got up and she left. And I don't know how it worked in post-op. Did she have other people to take care of, or did it bring stuff up? I didn't know. Anyway, she came back later. She was the one who wheeled me out to the car. And I asked her some questions. She said, actually, it has been a really hard week. She said, my stepmother died and my mother-in-law both died this week.
Mm.
And I said, I know, and they're right here. They're fine. It was clear as day. Like, this is not normal for me, but and I said, and your grandmother? And she said, my grandmother's still alive. I said, not that one, the other one. She said, well, she died when I was little. I said, I know, she's right. There was not a doubt in my mind because they were right there. They were fine. They loved her. So all they wanted for her was to be happy and to know how very loved. And the reason I am so incredibly grateful for that is it confirmed what I intellectually knew. They're fine. They're fine. But also, there has never been a moment in any of our lives when we have been alone or unloved, and there never will be. And we often feel so alone and so misunderstood.
We do. Yeah.
But we're not. And these people that we're trying to carry their pain, they're over it. Right?
Yeah.
So whether you believe that part or not, carrying around dead people's pain isn't doing a lot of good.
No, it's really not. This human experience, it could be a whole lot lighter, I suppose, if we really were to accept that. And I love that story so much. Recently, I've been doing a lot of research into near-death experiences as well. And in reading so many of them and their experiences, it had me, I guess, release a lot of fear, and really trust that what I physically see and hear on this planet, in the human experience, it's all going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I wonder, because a lot of parents will be listening to this podcast, it's meant for them, and there is a lot of distrust that things will be okay for their kids. There is a lot of distrust. I don't know that I've heard any parent trust when they come to me. It's mostly out of fear that they come to me and they want to work with me because they're terrified. They're terrified of their child's future and they only have the negatives in their mind. Right. And I wonder if this type of view or this belief system can alleviate a little bit of that, and they can delve into a bit more of that trust that they are going to be okay. Yeah.
And there is one of the things that people have had near-death experience, almost to a person, will say is, oh, I realized, we organized this. I chose this family. I chose these parents. I chose this life. And so your kids chose you. Like, they knew who you were. It wasn't like a lottery where they got what they, right? It was like potluck. They knew who you were. They came for a reason. They've got their own path, right? And they've got help and support beyond you, right? The other thing I would say is, there is this common, you can go back 10,000 years and you'll find in every single age written material saying the world is ending, right? As long as there's been written material, there have been predictions that the world is ending. And so that's a really common thing. It is so much safer now than even 30, 40 years ago. You watch a movie or TV from back then, and even they're not going to like at these days, if in the US, if a person of color is shot and killed, it's on the news. Do you know how much it happened 40 years ago? Never, ever made the news. Right. So as disturbing as it all seems, people talk about the good old days, and I'm like, what good old days are they talking about? Because sexual predation was much worse and never reported. Right. There's so many things that we think, oh, it was safer then. Oh no. You go back 200 years, we have the average middle class person today has a better quality of life than royalty did 200 years ago. Things we take for granted: running water, electricity, hygiene. And so things are getting better, and we're coming up to a place in consciousness. If you want to cut this part out, you can, but before the pandemic, the last 2 years when I was traveling around, I had noticed such an acceleration of consciousness when I was teaching, it was off the charts. It was like, I don't know if this is auditory or if there's a visual, but it went like almost a vertical curve. It was the learning, the expansion was happening so fast. And there's an interview I did with somebody February 17th of 2020, where I said, I don't understand. The acceleration of consciousness is off the charts, and on the surface, everything looks the same. I said, it is not sustainable. Something has to happen. And within 2 weeks, the whole world shut down. Not the way I imagined it happening,
Sure.
but all previous momentum came to a halt, right? You know, the law of inertia, a body in motion tends to stay in motion, a body at rest tends to stay at rest. And what's happening now is everybody got like a 2-year timeout, a chance to reevaluate, and a whole lot has shifted. A lot of people are not going back to because it takes a lot of energy to start momentum back up. The stuff that is being started back up, there has to be drive for it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are not willing to do the long commute or the working as many hours now. They call it quiet quitting, but it's this massive redirection in consciousness. And I got the virus that everybody later freaked out about. I got it in Australia in the summer, our summer, in July of 2019, long before it was a thing. We got it and I had a fever. That's all I had. I had like a fever and I got lightheaded and was off for like, I'd never had the flu. And I hadn't had a fever in 20 years, and I only get a fever when I need an identity update.
Wow.
And so in the years since then, it's like an entirely different landscape inside. And I thought it was fascinating that one of the hallmarks of that virus was a fever. It's like a planet-wide chance for people to update. And some people did the big update. They like left the planet. They're getting entirely new software. And other people are kind of upgrading as they go. But I am I don't need to be hopeful for the future, because hope is what you have when you're not sure. And there is just such beauty that is so close to us. We're coming to a really important step forward in our collective consciousness. And not everybody's going to do it at the same time. It'll happen in waves. But the children coming in, I remember hearing a couple of different midwives say they're coming in differently now. Like kids are coming in differently.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know what they meant by that?
Almost like with an expanded consciousness.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
More cable ready, so to speak. Like they're so what looks like, because if you've ever done a remodel in your home, you know that from almost the day it starts till almost the day it ends, it is utter chaos. And you start to wish you'd never been born. And then it's finally done and you have this brand new thing, right?
Sure.
Because globally we are in the middle of a huge remodel of consciousness. And so it looks like chaos. But it is a massive upgrade. And I'm sorry, I think I took us a little bit away from the family, but
no, that's really it all rolls into one. It all impacts everything. And so from just on that, what do you think? What's the possibility or the outcome of this upgrading consciousness for you? What do you feel or think about it?
Well, and it really it clarified my work to a huge degree, because I realized the thing that is most in the way of people experiencing their joy, their potential, and their real creatorship, right? Their magical creatorship. The thing that is most in the way is fear. Fear of not having enough, fear of not being enough, that fear and that lack of self-worth. Because what causes, a lot of the problems around the world is greed, and greed is fear of not having, it's just fear of not having enough money, not having enough power or control. And so when we start to revise all that kind of grooved in patterning of fear, of not enough, bad things, bad things are going to happen. I had this client of mine told me, he said, I know what's coming in the future and it's not good. And I thought, that's fascinating. Nobody actually knows what's coming. But he said it like there was one future. There's not one present right now.
No,
Some
true.
people's present right now is war, and some people's present right now is peace and prosperity. There's no one future. There are so many options available to us.
Yeah.
But there's no rule that says things have to be dangerous and scary. So that's just that's patterning in our neurology and legacy patterning from a lot of our families. And so as that stuff starts to get revised, like every bit of fear that starts to get revised and we start to feel safer in the world and better about ourselves is what makes that future here right now. I mean, I have a class called Wired for Magic, and in it, like one of the first things we did is start addressing what the big safety fears, and then the fears around love and connection, and then the fears about our own lack of worth. And as we layered those in, the things that those people were able to create in their bodies and in their world and together were truly magical. Like we had people with illnesses that you're not supposed to recover from, where their bodies were just healing. So when you start to, every little bit of the fear that we revise and every little bit of that lack of self-worth that we revise is huge. And in families, a lot of parents, they try so hard to instill a sense of self-worth in their kids, but if the parents don't have it, they can't really give it to the kids, because the kids aren't paying attention as much to what the parents say as to how the parents feel. And this is not to make parents feel bad, because they're all doing the best they can, and your kids knew who you were. But I would say everything that parents do to let themselves feel more of their own worth and feel safe is a blessing for everyone they come in contact with, especially their kids.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question, Michelle. So, we've got parents listening, and one of the questions might be, oh my God, I don't want my child to take on my pain and suffering. Oh my God, I want them to be free to be themselves. What on earth do I need to do? What on earth do I need to do for my child to stop that? So what would be your answer to that? You probably briefly answered it just then, but what would be your go-to here and now? Start this, do this.
Right. It is hard to do on your own. Because when I had this work, when I have stuff up, I still go see somebody else. I've been doing it for 27 years. I still go see somebody else. It's hard to do on yourself, because you're blinded by the very things you're trying to change. But there are, this is why I have a lot of NLP classes. It's why I wrote the Money Magic book, because the Money Magic book addresses a lot of those beliefs about safety and self-worth. Because I have people who, a client of mine sold her company for $1 billion, and she's still riddled with anxiety.
Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of people think if they have money, they won't be anxious. Well, no, if you've got that patterning running, it's just going to run with more wattage behind it.
Sure.
So, so this is why I like the NLP tools, the ability to rewire a lot of that really those primal associations that are still running. Here's what a lot of people do. They consciously try to change things from their adult cognitive brain, but the patterns that are in their way are literally stored in a different part of the brain. They're stored back here. And so trying to cognitively decide, well, okay, I will decide that my life is abundant, is like if there's a faulty wiring in the basement and you rewire the penthouse, it doesn't change what's in the basement. And so that's why a lot of people get frustrated, like, oh, I tried that positive thinking and it didn't work. Well, mostly that means because they were trying to use a part of the brain that is not the part that's generating the limitation. So the NLP tools are really good for accessing the parts of the brain that are holding the old patterning and rewiring it there. And when you rewire it in the place where it needs it, then the patterning is just different. It's just different, it just stays.
Mm.
Um, and so I like those tools a lot. There are some really lovely quantum tools out there. Matrix energetics. I like I like the tools. I like Richard Bartlett. He's got a unique, he and I differ on some of our opinions, but he created some good tools.
Okay.
And I say that with all love and respect for Richard.
Mm.
But there are some lovely quantum tools that you can use. And then the family constellation work really helps with the generational piece.
Yeah, sure. And so I guess as a final note on, I guess, the topic of how do we feel confident in our parenting, okay, in raising unique little beings without worrying about the outside world. So that's essentially what this whole podcast is about. You know, how do we stay, I guess we could use the word sovereign, right? In this little being in front of us, in our family unit right here, right now, without the outside pressures seeping on in. You know, it's like these little waves of you know, ickiness getting into our family system, our own thoughts, our own little beings in front of us, our children. What is the one line or the words of wisdom that you could give to parents who just feel like it's not working, I'm scared, I'm terrified, I don't know if what I'm doing is right, I don't know if I should believe what the doctor is saying about my child, do they have a problem, is the school teacher right in that they do have this diagnosis, this, you know, there's just so many possibilities of the problems. And what do parents need to remember or believe in?
So that there's that old, in one line, the Rumi quote, when I was young and ambitious, I tried to change, young and clever, I tried to change the world. Now I'm old and wise and I changed myself. So everything that parents do to make themselves more at peace, to make themselves feel safe and experience their own worth will naturally create that environment for kids. And it is somebody who is having that experience of being at peace with themselves and the world is much more, especially if it's a parent, much more influential than somebody from the outside. Right. And it gives the kids a model for what it's like when you are at peace with yourself and the world, and where you are self-determining of your experience and your worth. Right. They start to internalize that, because that's what we really want for everybody, is everybody to have an internalized experience that you're safe, you're loved, you matter. Right.
Yeah.
Because once that's in there, then it solves so many of the problems. And a certain trust that you're okay. You know, I knew some people who they were trying to protect their daughter from getting scared. And so they wouldn't let her watch any scary movies. They did so much to try and keep her from being scared that by the time she was 12, she was scared of everything.
Yeah.
Because she was getting the message she couldn't handle it.
Yes.
Yeah. And so when parents feel at peace with themselves and the world, and they're always going to be, you know, to be a parent is to be somewhat worried, but the more you have that sense of kind of faith, not faith, but that sense of peace and trust in yourself and life, then you can hold that as well on behalf of your child, and they start to learn that life can support them. Right. And then they're going to gravitate toward places where that is more true.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that's such a beautiful, big thinking vision that we need to come back to when we are so stuck in the details and the you know, the here and now overwhelming things. We need to come back to this greater vision, which is what you've just shared. It's really grounding in a sense. So thank you for sharing that.
And when you're at peace with yourself and the world, your intuition is better. You're like, you see more clearly, and you're open to like, oh, maybe it's not that thing. Maybe there's actually what's going on is this. You have a lot more access to all kinds of wisdom when you're not kind of freaked out yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So where the links for you and everything is going to be in the show notes. All of that will be available to everybody listening. If you're curious about Michelle's work and, you've heard about something that you haven't heard of before and you want to find out a bit more about it and follow Michelle or work with her or attend one of her courses, the links will be in there. And I'm assuming, Michelle, the best place, just if people are listening now, where would they go? Where should they go for you?
Probably either my website or there's a Facebook group as well with some kind of, webinars and stuff in there, but you can find interviews and stuff on my website, michellemastersnlp.com.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Michelle. So we've got our final 5. So
okay,
quick round of 5 questions. So
okay,
these can be 1 words or 1 sentence, whatever flows through you, Michelle. Let's see what comes through. Are you ready?
yes.
Okay, let's do it. So self-expression is
Inevitable. The question is, which parts of yourself are you expressing?
yeah. Okay, cool. What do children need most from their parents?
To know that they're loved.
Mm-hmm. Which common belief about child behavior do you disagree with?
Yeah, that's too big one for me to answer in a 1 sentence. Yeah, but I don't think there are any bad kids, but I'll leave it there.
Great, awesome. What are you currently working on within yourself at the moment?
Yeah, because as I expand, it puts more pressure on the whatever places are still kind of shaky in me. And so that that piece that a lot of us have, well, I'll just say for me that, sometimes still doubting my own magical divinity and worth, right?
Sure, yeah.
But the bigger that gets, the better everything works.
Yeah, I love the magic.
Yeah.
We all need more magic. We all need more magic. And finally, what does a happy home mean to you?
A home where even if there are dust ups and things, at the end of the day, everybody knows they have a place there and they're loved.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for having this conversation with me. This is such an interesting and enlightening and unique conversation, and maybe some people have never heard these concepts before, which is wonderful. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess.